Ladies and gentlemen, find a stopping point. Today, we are going to chat about note-taking, how to do this effectively, and how to use our new resource, Noodle tools, to help us. If you were gone yesterday, either absent or exercising your civil rights protest, we will get you caught up. But what you missed was a kind of group of partnered activity where you went through your 4 articles and highlighted now, not for stance questions and not for nonfiction signposts, but really trying to nail down where do these articles start to articulate or show evidence of the problem of implicit bias, or maybe sub-problems that implicit bias tends to cause. And then on the flip side of this, what are the solutions? Okay? What are things, strategies, suggestions that experts seem to say either helps or things we can do to try? okay? So, at this juncture, will you please pull out your 4 articles, okay? And if you were here yesterday, some of those articles have been highlighted. If you weren't, that's fine. We'll get you, like I said, we'll get you caught up. Also, if you were not here yesterday, you know Mrs. Chow, probably. She's our teacher librarian upstairs. But this is Miss Grubbs. She is a practicum student from the University of Iowa who will be with us till the end of April. Okay, so she'll be tooling around today. She's working on learning names. And then, like I told, 6th period, and then next Tuesday we'll try to mess her up again because on Thursday it'll come back to be in totally different order. Ha 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 ha! Yeah. But then, okay. So, in addition to highlighting for problems and solutions in each of our 4 articles, yesterday we also spent time registering for Noodle tools. Okay. If you were not here yesterday, you'll need to do that today, but I don't want you to try to work ahead or try to fix it on your own. Really, it is not super intuitive to go it alone. And when we are done with mini lessons, we will have you kind of congregate around Mrs. Shaw, and she'll do a mini lesson for how to get caught up with that. Okay, so don't worry about that right now. But note-taking is the name of the game today. So if your Chromebook is open, please close it, because I do want your undivided attention up here as we process what we're going to be working on for the next couple of days. What I have to certify, by the way, that you can do before I pass you for this unit. It's a lot of work for both of us, but this is why it's very important to listen up to instructions beforehand, okay? So I think the hardest part about doing research or taking evidence from a source of expertise and trying to fashion it into something that is not plagiaristic is really difficult. I'm a 34-year-old English teacher who teaches this stuff, and I'm still telling you that it is really difficult, okay? So it all hinges around the idea of paraphrasing. What's a typical working definition that you guys have learned for what paraphrasing is? What do you do when you paraphrase, Morgan?
You take a part of the text and then you simplify it and say.
Okay, you simplify it perhaps. You put it in your own words, or you say it in your own words. Okay? Anything to add? The whole process of saying it in your own words is not merely a translation. This is pretty critical that you learn this. For instance, if the thing I'm trying to paraphrase uses the word critical, and I'm like, okay, the source, important. You haven't paraphrased. You've translated, which is still plagiarism. So, Scrubs is laughing, even though we haven't talked about this. In some West High right now, and if I really had my act together, we'd be using a program that's called Turnitin. Did you use Turnitin in high school too?
No, but we use it at the university.
Yeah, you use it at the university. It has a library of every single source material on the internet, off the internet, and it will tell you the plagiarism quotient in your paper. Like something you thought you were doing the right thing just by translating the words as you go, and it's 87% plagiarized, and your professor's like, not taking this. or dropping you with a 0. That happens too. You kind of college for this.
One of my friends wasn't able to turn in a paper because he accidentally plagiarized his own paper that he had written a year before. He was writing on similar material.
Oh my gosh, Barb, they're my own ideas. No, they're not. No, they're not. Apparently not. So, paraphrasing is not something that goes away, but as long as you have hands or you can avert your eyes, I think I've got a solution for you. At least it's worked for me that I still use. Okay? Right? So, it is perfectly okay when you're writing about research to incorporate quoted material directly from another source. Okay? That's perfectly okay. But you don't want to overuse quoted material. You want there to be a balance in your work of things that are quoted and then things that are inspired by research but that you put in your own words, that you paraphrase. So for instance, the original text is this. Part of the problem is outright racism among some judges and cops, socioeconomic disparities that can drive more crime, and drug laws that disproportionately affect Black Americans. But the other explanation is that cops, like everyone else, carry this implicit bias, which experts agree affects how they police people of different races. What I literally do is, if this quote is printed on paper, I take my hand and I cover that section of the paper. If it's on a screen, I tend to look up and to my right. And now say, what I've read is important. I know I keep coming back. I've highlighted this, that this is like a pivotal thing, and there's loads of evidence here. So what did it actually say? Okay. Problems in society could be due to people who are racist, could also be due to the fact that class disparities among minority people, and could also be impacted by drug laws, either the way drugs are processed or sentenced. But on the other hand, implicit bias could be at work here, where people who mean well and they're not intentionally racist may just be working with bias. I looked away from the material. I first knew that I understood it. By looking away, I'm not inspired to just directly translate any of the words or the structure of what was written. And I just, as if I were to say to you, so that meant this. Okay? Now, there are good ways to do this and there are bad ways to do this. First of all, the whole essence of a paraphrase is to make it your own idea. Not that we're not going to give credit where credit is due, because this came from somewhere. This idea was inspired by a researcher or by a journalist, but that's where the citation comes into play. So when we paraphrase, it's a bad way to start by referencing the author. She says that, or what she really means here is, who's she? The author, who originally wrote this idea. But I'm trying to make it look like I've done my research and I now have new ideas based on what I've read, so I'm going to leave that part off. Instead, looking away, you might come up with something like we just talked about. Though racism can drive problems that affect law enforcement and poverty, police officers and the way they interact with minorities, it could also be because of bias and not racism. So kind of like reworking the structure of the sentence, how the sentence addresses different ideas, put them in a different order. This is all really helpful stuff when you're talking about paraphrasing an idea. Okay? This is the trickiest thing that we do when we take notes. So anybody who's ever tried to convince you that paraphrasing isn't that hard, they've never done it right, or they are crazy. Yeah? So this is going to take some time. Now, why Noodle Tools is kind of handy is because it walks you through a process that does this, or that helps you, that guides you through it as you take each note. So you don't have to, when you're so close to an idea, after studying it, when you're getting ready to write a paper, that's the wrong point at which to paraphrase. You want to paraphrase when you're first kind of inspired by the idea, because then you're not tied to what the original words said, okay? So this is a Noodle Tools card, okay? I'll show you how to get there, or at least describe how to get there in just a second. But before we take any notes on any part of any article, you have to first be able to say, yeah, I do understand what this means, okay? It is the biggest mistake to think that, well, this is said in a really smart way. Like, this is clearly like a good note, mainly because I can't understand it. Bad news. There's so much in these articles that you do understand. Why labor and work too hard trying to parse out a note for a sentence that didn't just kind of make itself clear to you? If you really want to use this note, before you take the time to try to decipher it yourself, turn to a friend or call one of us over and we'll kind of work through it with you. I'm not saying don't use it, but just make sure you know what it means before you take the note. The worst thing is like, okay, well, why'd you take this note? I don't know. Well, what does it say? What does it mean? It just sounded smart. Oh, Lordy. Okay. So on your Noodle Tools card, there's a space for a title. Okay, I'll get to that in a second. You'll also see a drop-down menu of the 6 citations I shared with you. So yesterday, after you created your account, you had to go back to the agenda, and there was a link. Click here for the period 7 bibliography. Hopefully you did that, and then you refreshed your Noodle Tools page. Then you would have, I created all the citations for you. Okay? You're going to select the one that matches the highlighted article that you're working on. Okay? You can, down here, where you use the direct quotation, these are words exactly as they appear on the article. So you can type them in from your paper copy, or you'll notice on today's agenda, which I'm going to get back to in just a second, I'll do it right now. I have linked every article that we have, like an e-copy of every article. So for instance, if you want to borrow from the first one, the second one, or the last two were differentiated. So on the left, you're going to do the salmon color copies, the slightly advanced copies. Over here on the right-hand side are the light pink copies. Okay, so this is exactly how you could just copy and paste into the direct quotation from the e-versions. Okay. Then on the flip side, this is where you paraphrase. So what I saw in 5th and 6th period, which I thought was really smart, is on your Chromebook, kids were actually setting up, like turning their article over and setting it up on this side of their screen so they wouldn't be enchanted and locked into the words. That they merely use this box to say what they felt. Now down below are my ideas. I look at this as kind of like the so what. Well, why this note? It probably inspired some thinking of your own, or as you're kind of imagining, like, I can sense an argument coming on. I can use this research to help me prove something. Okay? So if, and I'm borrowing this from the Yolanda Young article, Implicit bias takes the form of subtle, sometimes subconscious stereotypes held by white teachers, which has been shown to result in lower expectations and rates of gifted program referrals for Black students. Well, in my own words, not looking at this screen, according to research, white teachers' stereotypes against students of color mean that they lower their expectations for what minority students can accomplish in class. They also may be less likely to suggest minority students for ELP or TAG availability, which is short for talented and gifted. So then, what's the so what? Ideas that are swimming around, this is where I'm kind of negotiating with the original author. Well, lowered expectations might be offered to students so that they feel successful. I thought about that. Sometimes I think I do that. Like I negotiate a little bit in terms of like, let's not fight this battle. Let's just get through this. Do 3 instead of 4. But these lowered expectations will never allow minority students to reach their full potential. And then I also thought about this also would require that students actually do what's assigned to them. Like, regardless of their minority status, if I assign something that I think has high expectations and then a kid just doesn't do it, does that show my implicit bias or their apathy or laziness? Just thinking out loud in my ideas section. Okay? So this is what your finished note card will look like. Oh, and then you've noted that I tagged this problem. Okay? When I'm done, I'll hit save and close and move on to my next note. Okay? So this, I'll describe to you how you get here. It takes you have to open up your project on Noodle Tools first before you can see your option to start a note card. But you're going to follow this link right here, create 6 problem notes and 6 solution notes on Google Tools. And we'll have a couple of days to work on this. So you'll click on that. It will open up the sign-in page. Remember, because you registered yesterday, if you were here, your sign-in personal ID is your Google email address and whatever password you assign. This would be a great time to click Remember Me when you sign in so that your Chromebook saves your login information. Your projects will open right up. You should see your implicit bias project. You'll click on that, and then across the top of the page, you'll see a button for note cards. That'll take you right to the form where at the top left, plus new is where you actually begin taking notes. Okay? At this point, I think I don't have that many of us in 7th period who weren't here today, so let's kind of arrange ourselves maybe back in, well, how many, raise your hand if you weren't here today. Let's see. Yesterday. You are here today. Good grief. Okay, let's kind of congregate over here, guys, since you've got sort of a concentration, I guess, over here. And Soren and my phone, you guys can haul out, grab your stuff, and move somewhere else in the room. If you were here yesterday, you can arrange yourselves in the partnerships or groups with you highlighted information. You can start passing those highlights around.